Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to my tutorial on installing the Anaconda and Pycharm software on Windows 10. And let me begin by apologizing for my voice. I lost my voice last night, and there's not a lot of it left to even hear this morning. So I've turned up the mic sensitivity, and you're going to have to bear with me. I'm I'm recording the tutorial here at the beginning of the summer 2017 semester, and it is uh, it's going to address how to install the Anaconda Open Data Science platform software and the Pycharm Integrated Development Environment, or IDE, on Windows 10. And I'm hoping that this tutorial will have a fairly long life, as long as a year, I'm thinking. And that means a couple of things. It means that it's going to be used for other courses. This is being recorded uh, first and foremost for a Python course that I'm teaching at the University of Illinois this summer. But it will be used in other semesters and other universities as well. Um, and uh, Another impact of the life of the tutorial is um, whenever you do a demonstration of some kind of installation, you're always doing it. Ideally, you're doing it with the newest version of all the software you can get your hands on. Sometimes that's not a good combination, but it is today, I think. Um, so, when you try to follow this, you may easily find that the version of software that you're finding, like the version of Windows that you have, version of Windows 10 that you have, or the version of Anaconda that you find, or the version of Pycharm that you find, will be newer than what I show here in the tutorial. And I just want to say that that's okay. In most cases, that's going to work as well or better um, than the version that I'm going to be showing you. You definitely don't want to be using older versions of software. Okay? Since everybody who has Windows 10 is entitled to a free update, and Anaconda is free, and the version of Pycharm that I'm going to recommend is free as well. There's really no reason that you can't have the most recent version of all of these things on your machine. And as I said, occasionally we'll get into the situation where the most recent combination of things are not compatible with each other, but that usually doesn't last very long. Okay? All right, so here we are. We're on my newly created virtual machine of Windows 10. So we might want to say, well, what version of Windows 10 is this? Because you should probably check your own version. And if I go over here and I go to Windows System and go to the control panel and System and Security, and then pick System, I can see Windows Edition information. So I'm using the Windows 10 Education version, which happens to be available for free to students in the two university departments where I teach. Um, and Today is May 11th, I think. Yeah, May 11th. And I've applied all the updates. I applied them yesterday, I guess. So I've applied all the Windows updates since all the way through May 10th. Okay? And I'd advise you before you install the software to get up to date on your operating system. Okay. The browser that I'm going to be using is Microsoft Edge. Not particularly because I'm an Edge fan, but because that's really the preferred browser in Windows 10, and I hope we're not going to find any anomalies on this install. What I'm showing you here is a page from the weekly schedule application from the Python course I'm going to be teaching this summer. And if you're in a different course, well, you'll have a weekly schedule page, and it'll have a computing setup activity like this one, and it'll probably have links for Anaconda, Pycharm Edu, Pycharm Professional, and links to the tutorials. Okay, but they may link to slightly different things, right? So use the page for your course. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to install Anaconda. Okay, so let me click on the link for Anaconda. And here we are. So briefly, Anaconda is a neatly packaged combination of Python interpreter and Python code libraries, such that you get a completely compatible group of software products related to Python. And this has been kind of a problem with Python over the years. The compatibility of the various libraries and interpreters and versions of the language has been problematic. And Anaconda is a way to solve that. Okay, so that's why we're going to use it. So here we are on the Anaconda page. And as you can see, we're on the tab for download for Windows. I've already recorded the tutorial for doing this on Mac OS. You can install the software on Linux. I'm not going to do a tutorial for it. We don't have a lot of students who use Linux clients. And so that's why I've said to students, if you want to use a Linux client and install it on there, contact me first and I'll do my best to give you a few pointers, but I'm not going to support that directly as a preferred option for our course. Here you can see that the version of Anaconda that we have here is 4.3.1 for Windows, and that's fine, okay? And so now when you're coming to this, you may easily find that even if you come here this afternoon, you might find 4.3.2, okay, or 4.4.0, or 5.1.3 someday, okay? As long as it's later, as long as it's a later version, or 4.3.1, you're in great shape, okay? And what's it say here? Well, we want to download the installer. I'm not going to verify the integrity of the installer file, but you could. And double-click the exe file of the installer and follow the instructions on the screen. So that's going to work pretty easily. If you go over here to the right, you see we have two options. Okay, we can either do the installer for Python 3.6 or Python 2.7, and let's roll out everything related to Python version 2. One of the real barriers to the adoption of Python as a preferred language for developers has been the differences between Python 2 and 3. And we have finally gotten to the point where Python 3 has taken off. So you definitely don't want to be mucking about with Python 2. If you're in my course, we're doing all Python 3 all the time. Okay? So we want this upper portion. And you can see that it's chosen the 64-bit installer here. And that's because I have a 64-bit operating system installed. Now, if you have a 32-bit operating system installed, it's probably highlighting the other download. Well, pick the one that applies to you. So I'm going to click on 64-bit installer, and I'm going to start that download. And it asks me, what do I want to do? And I'm going to say I'm going to save as, and it seems to want to go to downloads. That looks good. All right, so now I'm going to click on save. And now the download is starting. Looks like it's going to take a minute. We have something to do in the meantime. It is telling us that we can get a copy of the cheat sheet. Now, the cheat sheet is a PDF document that tells us it's a better introduction to what Anaconda is and where to get information about Anaconda than the information I've given you already. So I recommend that you put in your email address here. Now, for this first course I'm teaching at the University of Illinois, so there I'm trainer1 at illinois.edu. And I'm just going to say, yeah, sure. I'll take the cheat sheet. I've got a lot of copies of this, but that's good. So it looks like we're downloaded. Okay, so let's open the folder that we downloaded into. And there it is. Okay, and it's a type application, which means it's a .exe file. Okay, and typically when you want to run an application, you double click it. So we're going to double click it. And we're going to go through the dialog. So this is kind of the splash panel. We'll click next. And it wants to know if we agree to the license. Yes, I agree. I'm going to install it for just me. Okay. Recommend that you do the same. Where's it going to go? Well, it's going to put the Anaconda 3 software under my home directory. My home directory on this machine is ktrainer. It sounds about right for me. If I need to find it, I know I'm going to find it there. So just click on next. It says I want to add Anaconda to my path environment variable. That's going to make Anaconda findable in the operating system. Leave that checked, yeah. Register Anaconda as my default Python 3.6. Leave that checked because we want that. And then just go click on install. So there's a lot of files that get installed on our machine. And I'm going to pause while that's going on so you don't have to watch it all, and I'll be right back. Okay, and now we're back. And I'm glad I paused it because that took quite a while. As you can see, the installation is now complete. So let's click on next. And it tells us thank, all that kind of stuff. Let's click on finish. And tells us about Anaconda Cloud and all that kind of stuff. Interesting information. This is not something that we are going to be making use of. At least certainly not right now. Okay, so I'm going to shrink the browser for now. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I've properly installed Anaconda. And how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to get up a command line console and I'm going to try to run Python. Okay, because part of the Anaconda install is to install a particular version of the Python interpreter and associated software. And we want to make sure that that's all hooked up right. So, how do we get ourselves to a command line window? Well, here's how we do this. Let's go down and hit that little start icon. Okay, and then let's go down in the alphabetical list, go down to Windows Accessories and expand that. And I'm looking for the command line tool, and it's not in Windows Accessories here this morning, which is where I remember it being. So I'm going to pause this and go find it. I'll be right back. Found it. Okay, so apparently over the years it's migrated to Windows System. So let's go down there, expand that, and there it is. It's right at the top, Command Prompt. Okay, so I don't want to go hunting here every time I want a command prompt. So what would I like to do? Well, I find the easiest thing is to pin things down here on the bottom to the taskbar. It's a little bit old school. I mean, we could put a link to it up in this area here, but not being a big Windows 10 guy, I'm not real fond of this part of the user interface yet, but I still like my taskbar just fine. So I'm going to hover over a command prompt, right click, and I don't want to pin it to start. That's the thing off to the right that I'm not really liking that much. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pick more, and then in that I'm going to pick pin to taskbar. And now we see the command prompt right there. And I'm just going to hit escape to clear all that, and I'm going to use the icon on the taskbar to run a command prompt window. And now it's opened it up. Okay, so I'm in my home directory on the C drive. That makes sense. And this thing should be installed so you can run it from any directory. So let's just type Python and see what we get. Oh, very good. Well, I think we got a good install. Well, why do I think so? Well, it's running Python 3.6.0, and that's the version of Python that we installed with Anaconda. And it also said it has Anaconda 4.3.1 64-bit, and that's the version that we installed in Anaconda. So that's terrific. That's just what we want. And so where are we? Well, we have fired up the Python interpreter. And over the course of the first chapter or two, we're going to come to understand what a Python interpreter is. But let's just say that it's an environment that will execute Python commands. And so one of the neat things that we can do is simply type in a Python command, and it will execute it for us. So the simplest thing that you can do is to print some text. Well, I accidentally typed some text. And the command for that is print, P-R-I-N-T. And then there's always some additional information inside of parentheses at the end of print. Okay, so we're going to say left paren. And we want to print a string of characters, otherwise called a character string. And the classic thing you do when you're learning a language And this really dates back to the 60s when the guys who invented the Unix operating system and the C language wrote a very influential textbook in which they had us. The first thing that we did was to print a phrase "Hello World." So we've been doing it in every language since, and this is no exception. So we want to put a string of characters. The the standard way to put a character string into this command is to enclose the character string in apostrophes, sometimes called single quotes. So I'm going to say apostrophe or single quote, hello, comma, world, exclamation. Okay, and then I have to close the parentheses. And it turns out that for those of you who have used other languages, like maybe Java or JavaScript, you might be used to putting something like a semicolon at the end of a line of code to say that's the end of a line of code. Well, we don't do that in Python, so this is a full command right here. And so to execute this, we simply press enter. And so we can see that it did not do what we thought. And why? Oh, we got an error because we don't have the closing apostrophe after world exclamation point. Well, gosh, it checks for errors too. So what I do, I just hit my up arrow to get my line of text back. I don't want to have to type it in. So I did the up arrow and I got my line of text back. And let's use a backspace, and I'm going to put the closing apostrophe in and the closing paren. Now let's press enter, and it prints out hello world. So pretty cool, huh? You're a Python programmer now. Okay, so you, as you're getting ready to work with Python, we'll be reading our texts. In this first course, we have a primary text and kind of a companion text, and they may be showing you situations where they want you to type things into the Python interpreter at the command line, and this is how you get there, and this is how you do it. Now, how do you get out of the Python interpreter? Well, you type exit, E-X-I-T, a set of parens, okay? And then press enter. And poof, we're done. So pretty cool stuff. So let's clear our screen. You always used to be able to do that with the CLS for clear screen. Still works. It's worked for 35 years. Great. I'm going to pause for 1 second. Okay, we're back. Thanks for waiting. The other thing that you will see from time to time when you're reading through these introductory Python texts is they'll mention an IDE, an integrated development environment called IDLE. And if you want to play around with that, even though the command line and IDLE are not the tools that we're going to use in our course, you probably just want to find your way around. So how do you run IDLE? Well, from the command line, you type in IDLE, I-D-L-E, enter, and a window will pop up, and here we can see that we're going to get the Python 3.6.0 shell, which is a more formal name of IDLE. And why is IDLE called IDLE? Well, it's named after Eric Idle of Monty Python fame. And why is Python called Python? Well, it's not named after the serpent, but after Monty Python's Flying Circus, the comedy troupe. And so that's how this came to be called Idle. Now, I'm not going to have you use the Idle IDE because we're going to be using Pycharm, which is a much more robust and full-featured IDE. But if you want to take a crack at Idle using some instructions that you find somewhere, here's how you start it. Okay, and how do you close Idle? Well, because it's it has a Windows dialog box, we just go up and close the box. Pretty simple stuff. Okay, so that was a good install. All right, now let's close our command prompt window. We can always open a new one when we want to. Now, the next thing I want to do is I just want to show you where that Anaconda installation went. Okay, so I'm going to go down and I'm going to open the File Explorer. And we can see, well, that's our download of the installer. But let's go find my home directory. Okay, so where is that? Well, it's in the C drive, which is on this PC. So click on this PC and local disk C. So let's double click on that. Okay, and then users. And the user that I am is KTrainer. So I'm going to open that. And there's Anaconda 3. So if we open that up, we see lots of subdirectories. This is all the stuff that we just downloaded and properly installed, configured, and hooked up. Okay, so if we, in the course of our travels, have to say, well, where is the Anaconda software? Well, we'll know that it's on the C drive under users, our ID, user ID, and then Anaconda 3. And it put it there because we said we wanted to install it just for our own use. That was the option that we picked. Okay, so we've done this. Now let's come back to Edge. And we're done with Anaconda for now. So let's do some backing up. Oh, okay, so that Anaconda Cloud we don't want to look at. And this start I think we don't want to look at. So this was the download. Let's do the back arrow and get back up to the weekly schedule page. So now we're going to have the discussion about the Pycharm IDE. So an IDE is an integrated development environment. It's a combination of a bunch of tools kind of all put together. It would be like some kind of clever pocket knife or handy leather making tool that all folded up and you had all your tools in the same place, right? That's what integrated development environments or IDEs are. And Pycharm is a product from a company called JetBrains. Their first IDE product was one for the Java programming language. And then they've had Pycharm now, well, certainly for 5 years, probably a lot longer. And Pycharm is just a honey of an IDE for Python. And it's going to allow us to do our coding and our testing and all kinds of other kinds of programmerish activities inside of one product. And so it's kind of what Idle wanted to be, but was just really a rudimentary kind of entry for. Now, the great thing about Pycharm is that for us in a university program, it's free. Okay? And there are several free versions that we can choose from. The first version, and the one I'm going to recommend to people who are new to all this, is a version called a Pycharm Edu. And that's the first link that I have here. This is a free version that is free forever. It's for learners. Okay. There may be a restriction on it that it's not for commercial use, but certainly for your personal use, it's free forever. And it has all the features that we need for our Python course. Okay. Well, why would you want another version? Well, two things. One is that maybe you want to do some things beyond what we do in the Python course. So Pycharm Professional, for instance, is a more full-featured version of the IDE. Just has a lot more. If you keep with the pocket knife metaphor, if you've ever seen a display case of pocket knives, they have this simple one that has a big blade, a small blade, and like a nail file. And then they've got, kind of the granddaddy one that's got 25 tools in it. Well, Pycharm Professional is a bit the granddaddy pocket knife. And whereas very few people ever use all the tools on the big pocket knife, a lot of us are inclined to buy them. And that's why Pycharm Professional is there. There are, I think there's one more shade of Pycharm Community, but I don't think that's really something that we're going to be interested in. So I'm going to recommend that you download Pycharm Edu, and that's what I'm going to demo here in the tutorial. If you would like to check out Pycharm Professional because you're either advanced or adventurous, well, it's a good time to do that now, okay? Because it turns out that if you take that route and you do it the right way, you can actually have installations for both the professional version and the education version on your computer at the same time. That's what I have on my my Mac. Okay, the reason we can use Pycharm Professional because it's a pay version is if we click on the link I have here. This is a link to a place to get a student license. Okay, now in my case I got a faculty license, but if we come here, free for students, so long as you have a university email address and you're willing to renew your license about once a year, they will give you a license to not only Pycharm, but all their products. I mean, if you're a geek, this is just an incredible deal. In fact, the IDE that I've used for years, but haven't been using it in a number of years, is for Java, IntelliJ IDEA. And I've also used RubyMine, which is the IDE they have for Ruby on Rails. And, of course, Pycharm, right? So if you apply now, you put information in, and pretty much if you have a university email address, you're going to get licensed information back. And they give you this big installer. And if you download the installer, that will allow you to install both Pycharm Professional and Pycharm Edu. Okay, so I'm not going to have a demo for that. If you're that adventurous, you can go that way on your own. But the way, of course, that you install things is going to be similar to what we're going to do if we take the recommended for beginners Pycharm Edu path. So let's go back up and get on that path. Okay, so here's our link for downloading Pycharm Edu, and I clicked on that. Get Pycharm Edu. Okay, let's click through on that. And you can see that it knows I'm on Windows. That's good. And it has a download for me. And see the version over here, version 3.5.1, released on March 20th. Okay. Now, by the time that you get here, even if you get here this afternoon, it may already be 3.5.2, but as long as it's 3.5.1 or later, you're going to do just fine. So I'd say go for the new version, unless there's something to tell you that you don't want to do that. Okay. So I'm going to click on download. And it's going to tell me my download will begin shortly. Okay, I'm going to save as. And it's going to my downloads. That's the exe file, so we're just going to save that. And that's not really that big, so it's going to come down pretty quickly. Just a second or two, we'll be done. Okay, and let's open the downloads folder. Okay, and this is an application. That's a .exe file, and we're just going to double click on it and run it. Do we want to allow this app to make changes to our device? Yes. Welcome to setup. Next. It's going to put the code for the IDE into one of the program files directories that looks like the right place. Click on next. And now it's going to tell us they want us to pick our Python version. Okay. And I'm going to say that we want Python 3.5. We don't want Python 2. Python 2 is a nice opportunity to deal with a nostalgic version of Python, but we're really steering clear of it altogether in this class. So Python 3.5. I'm not going to ask for a launcher quite yet. That's fine. Click on next. Start menu folder, JetBrains. That's the name of the vendor. That's okay. Install. So now it's going to download and install. And I'm just going to pause it so you're not watching paint dry, and I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. So we're at the very end of the installation dialog. And so the question is, do we check this thing that says that we want to run Pycharm Edu or not? Well, if we don't check this, then the first time we run it, we're going to have to go searching for it. That's probably a good thing. Okay, so let's not check that. Let's click on Finish. And that looks like it's done. Okay. All right, so let's close these things here. I think we have what we want. Okay, so let's go find our Pycharm Edu application. So go down to the start icon on the lower left. And it should be in alphabetical order. It's even on the recently added. You can also see that here's the Pycharm Edu. Here is idle. Here's a shortcut to idle. Here's a shortcut to the Python 3.5 documentation too. So those are good things. But apart from that, we can find these in alphabetical order. So let's look up P under Python 3.5. And I'm not finding Pycharm here. That's not good. It could be under J for JetBrains. JetBrains, let's look. Yeah, JetBrains. If I said G, I apologize. I meant J. JetBrains Pycharm Edu 3.5.1. Okay, so let's click on this. Now, before we click on it, let's pin it to the taskbar, because we're going to be working in this a lot. So right click. We don't want to pin it to the start area. You could, but I don't. I want to go to More, and then Pin to Taskbar. And then you see it down there, PE. Okay, I'm just going to hit Escape to clear out all that Start menu stuff. And now I'm going to fire it up by clicking on the icon in the taskbar. And it's going to ask me it's going to ask me, do I want to import some settings or some programs or files from a previous version. We don't have a previous version, so I'm going to say no. That's the default. Click OK. Accept the privacy policy. Accept. Okay. So here we are. So it's a question of what we want to do next. And for our purposes, the thing that we want to do next is we want to create a new project. Okay, because we're going to test this out just to make sure that we get what we want. Okay. So let's click on Create New Project. Okay. So there are two things that have to be chosen here: a location for our project files, and we have to identify the correct Python interpreter that we want. And it turns out we're not pointing to the right version of either of these. Okay, so the location for our project files, I find things easier to locate if, instead of being out in my home directory, that they're they are further down in my home directory under my documents. So here's what we're going to do. Let's just go to let's go out here to the right to the ... Click on that. And we can see here, okay, we're in Ktrainer, okay, under C users. Let's expand that. And we can see documents. It's not called My Documents anymore. They've gotten classier than those days. So documents. So let's click that and open it. Okay. And there's something for Python scripts there. That's not what I want. So let's just say documents for right now. Let's just say OK. Okay. So notice, because we're on Windows, the path separators are backslashes. So we're going to use those. So within documents, let's let's create um, a directory we're going to keep all of our projects for this course. Okay, well, what are you going to call that? Well, I happen to know what this individual course is called that I'm teaching at the University of Illinois in the summer of 2017. But I'm going to use this install video for a number of courses. So you come up with some expression that reminds you that this is the place for stuff having to do with this course. And I'm just going to call mine, I'm going to call it my Python course. And I'm going to put underscores in between the words there. And then I have to have a backslash, and I need a name for the project. And this is a throwaway project. We're just going to call it practice 00. Okay, not a good name, but easily identified as garbage. Okay, so that's half the job. The other one is to pick the right environment to run this in. And it's not Python 3.5. We want to pick this Anaconda 3 version. So we take this little triangle drop down, and we say, oh, we want Anaconda 3 Python. Okay. Now, as soon as you do this, it's going to start downloading and refreshing. Well, it doesn't really download things. It is ingesting them into this product. And depending upon how fast your processor is, you could see this thing kind of chugging along on this for a while. Okay, I've got a pretty fast processor on this machine, so it seems to be all done. So now I'm going to say create. Click on create. And we're waiting for the IDE to open up. Okay. And in my experience on, it says scanning installed packages. Again, it's trying to see if it needs to do some more configuration, because this is the first time it's using this Anaconda version of Python. It looks okay. Looks okay. All right. So, so long as we're here, it looks like we have it properly installed. And look down in the right corner here. It says 2 processes running. So there is some squirrely installation stuff still going on here. Okay, so while that's going on, you could find the user interface being a little bit laggy. All right, that's probably going to be okay. I'm going to press ahead. But if you want to go get a cup of coffee and wait for these to end, they're the things that have to do with properly configuring the product to work with this Anaconda. Okay? Okay, but we're not going to wait. We're going to create our first Python script. Now, how's that different from what we did at the command line where we typed in print hello world? Well, that was a single Python command. Typically, Python scripts are a series of Python commands, but you can have a trivial one like we're going to create here. And you can create a Python script. You save it in a file. Python scripts have the file extension .py, and you give it a name, and you can save it. Okay, so you can code it, you can test it, you can save it. The next time you open up your Pycharm IDE, you can decide to open up that file again, run it again. Okay, so most of the work that we're going to do for assignments and for our project, they're going to go into Python scripts. Okay, and that typing in things in the console interpreter is a good learning device and sometimes a debugging device, a crude debugging device, but it's not a production code device. For production code, we're always going to create a script file or script files. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, we're going to right-click on the name of the project, say we want a new, and then over here, Python file. Okay. Now, all we have to do is to put the name of the file here. We don't have to put the file extension, the .py, because we've picked kind Python file. It knows to add that. Now, instead of doing the hello again, I'm going to do something a little bit more interesting. It's not going to go back to the 1960s, but it is an homage to it. Let's call this program Goodbye. So Goodbye, all one character string. We're not going to put the .py. It's going to put that in for us. Say OK. And what happens? Well, we get this editor panel here, and there's a little tab that says we're editing goodbye.py. And this is a pretty common everyday full text editor kind of editor. It just happens to be a particularly good one for Python code. So in order to promote good habits, we're going to do what a lot of people do. The first thing they do is they put a line of code that's not operational. It's just a comment that says what the name of the file is. Now, we don't do this in all languages, and it's a little bit redundant, but it is the common practice. So how do we get a comment line? Well, if we use the pound sign, it starts a comment line. So I'm going to say pound sign space, and I'm just going to put the name of the file, goodbye.py, and then I'm going to hit enter to get a new line in the editor. And then I'm going to have a comment line again on the second line. And I'm just going to explain what the intention of the program is. A trivial program that prints, and then I'm going to put in double quotes here. No, doesn't want to do double quotes. So put it in single quotes. I don't know why that's going on. That probably has to do with my virtual machine. I'm going to say goodbye, comma, cruel world. Like we're going to end it all. Okay? And I can put a period there. Okay, so that's all comments. That's all documentation. No, doesn't get executed at all. And now we're going to hit enter twice. Why? Because we want a blank line. We refer to blank lines as white space. Okay. And we're able to use it liberally in order to make our programs more readable. So we're just going to use the print again. Okay, so remember it's print. And then we have this set of parentheses which contains arguments. What are arguments? Well, they're things that we pass to the code that executes the print instruction. And one thing you use as an argument is a character string. So we're going to put in a character string. You probably couldn't tell, but all I did was type the left paren and I got the right paren. So let me back up. One of the things that IDEs have is they have a lot of labor-saving, mistake-avoiding features, and one of them is text auto-completion. And it's pretty common when you type a left paren that it will automatically generate the companion right paren. Likewise, when you type an apostrophe, it'll automatically generate the apostrophe that ends the character string. Now this is to save you time and mistakes. Remember the last time I forgot to type in the closing apostrophe, and when we went to run it we got an error. Okay, the other thing you can do here is you can cut and paste, and I just want to take this text, goodbye cruel world. I don't want those double quotes though. Okay, and I want to right click and say copy. And then I want to put my cursor right between the apostrophes and right click and say paste. And it says goodbye cruel world. Okay, so I'm going to go to the end of that line. And I'm going to press enter and see what happens. Oh, I just got another blank line. It didn't execute the command because we're not in the Python command interpreter environment. We're in a text editor. Okay, so if we want the Python interpreter to run this Python script, we're going to have to tell it to do it. Okay, now before we do that, what about saving our work? Well, in this particular IDE, saving is pretty much automatic. So it's probably already saved. If we want to be sure, we can type a Control S. That will force another save in most products on Windows, and in this one too. Okay, so how are we going to run it? Well, how about this play button over here in the left margin of the editor, in the gutter on the left side? That's going to be how we run it. So we're just going to go up there and left click it. And look what happened. Down in the bottom of this IDE, it's opened up a Python console panel. So what's that? Well, it's really emulating what goes on at the command line. Okay, so it's a lot like we had gone out of the editor, gone into the command line, typed Python, got things going, and then told it to load and run the goodbye.py program. Okay, instead it just opened it up for us and it ran it. That's pretty cool. Okay, what if we wanted to run it again? Well, there are two run buttons. There's one down here on the left of the console. Let's click that. Left click it. Run it again. Run it again. Run it again. And of course we have the one that's up on the editor, so we can click that. Run it again. Run it again. Okay, that's good. Now why would you want to run it again? Well, pretty typical use case. You've changed your code. Okay. You write in some code, you run a test, you see the results, and you go, well, that's not everything that I want, or that's not right, so you change it. So let's add to this goodbye cruel world. So let's say goodbye cruel world, I am never coming back. Exclamation point again. We're pretty worked up about it. Okay. All right, so we've changed this file. Do we have to worry about saving it? Well, probably not, but again, if you're compulsive about making sure you know it's saved, I'm a pretty compulsive guy myself, a Control S will put your mind at ease. Okay. That forces a save on the file. And now we can run either play button, will run the new version. So let's just try this one up here. It's closest. And there it is. Goodbye, cruel world. I'm never coming back. Well, that's great. That's terrific. So what if you're sick of this Python console and you want to close it? Well, you can. If you have a pretty big screen, you probably already see a red X in this toolbar to the left of the console. On mine, I've got the windows small enough to do my YouTube, so I click on this little caret down here and it shows me, oh, there's a red X. So I'm going to click on the red X and it's going to close the console. Okay. Now, what if I just wanted a console to type some things in? Well, why would I want to do that? Well, when you're learning Python, as you're going through chapters, you're going to find that the authors are going to say something like, oh, here's a line of code that I'd like you to type in and run. Well, how will you do that? Well, do you want to have to go out and get a command window and run the Python interpreter out in the bare operating system? Or do you want to run a Python console inside of Pycharm? Well, you want to run a Python console inside of Pycharm. So if you want to just start up a console, just get down here over Python console in the lower left, give it one left click, and it will open up. And well, I'm just going to allow access. Okay. And what do we have here? Well, here's our line prompt. Oh, well, the last time we had one of those, we were able to type in a line of code like print hello world, and it worked. So let's do that. Let's say print left paren. Notice we get the auto completion here. So this is even better than working at the true command line. Okay, so we need parens, we need apostrophes. One apostrophe gives us a second, and then just say hello world. Hello, comma, world, exclamation. Okay, and let's go out to the end of this line. And now, what's going to happen when I press enter? Well, I'm not in the editor. I'm in a console. So when I press enter, it's going to execute that command. And there it is, hello world. Okay, pretty good, huh? Even though I showed you earlier when we installed Anaconda how to find the Python interpreter, and also how to run the idle IDE, and you might have a book that's kind of working with that you want to do some practicing with. You can do the same things here. Okay, so to the extent that you have a full Python program or script that you want to run, well, then you put it into the editor. To the extent that you just have a line of code that they would like you to type in so you can kind of learn by example, well, then you go down here to the you go down here and get a Python console. Okay, so even though the textbook might not be saying, well, do this with Pycharm, you can certainly do all the things that they tell you to do in the beginning of these textbooks right here in Pycharm. Okay, so let's see one more thing. Let's close the Python console. Okay, let's close the editor. We see it up here. Okay, what if we wanted to create another Python script? Well, again, we do the same thing we did for goodbye.py. Just highlight the name of the project, right click, new Python file, and then we give it the name, and then it's going to add the .py. Okay, so that's how you can do all kinds of files. The other thing is, how does this all work if I close the application and open the application again? Well, let's look. Let's close the application. Are we sure that we want to do the exit? A lot of IDEs will ask you this because early in their lifetime, they took a long time to start up. And they were afraid that you would accidentally exit out and then you would have to get it to start up again. For me, because this, if I accidentally say to close the IDE, I can start it up again in a GIF. I'm going to say, don't ask me this again. And then I'm going to exit. Okay, so I want to run Pycharm Edu again. How do I do it? Well, I go down to my taskbar and I click on it. And it's going to open up. That didn't take too long. All right. And I can already see that it has the last project I work with here. That's good. Practice 00. So let's double left click on Goodbye Py. And there it is, just as we left it. And let's give it a run again to prove that it still runs. And it runs just fine. Goodbye, Crow World. I'm never coming back. So this should be just enough Python to scratch the itch of your curiosity, allow you to read the first chapter or so of your textbook, or other books that you might have, or tutorials, and know enough about how to work with Pycharm that you can use that tool with whatever text or tutorial you're working with. And with that, I'm going to wish you luck, and I'm going to say bye until next time. Bye-bye.